Today I am going to cover the listed topics that are the constructor and destructor. In constructor and destructor, first of all, we'll go to see what is the constructor, how constructors are different from the normal member function, what are the special characteristics of constructor, types of constructor. In the types of constructor, we will cover the default constructor, parameterized constructor, and the copy constructor. We'll see how constructor overloading is possible, how we can define the multiple construct in a class, what are the destructor, what are the special characteristics of destructor, and finally we're going to see this dynamic constructor. That we will start with the first, that is the what is the constructor. Well, a constructor is a special member function. Well, this is a very important line. It can be categorized as a special member function which is automatically used to initialize the object of the class type with the legal initial value. See, this one is important, that is the legal initial value. Well, we can define a constructor in the other way also, that is the constructor are a special class function which perform initialization of every object. So the compiler call the constructor whenever an object is created. A constructor initializes a values to object member after storage is allocated to the object. So while we defining a constructor, we need to follow this the special characteristic. But before the start this the characteristics, we need to understand, that is the how constructor are normal, how constructors are different from the normal member function. While to understand the constructor, we should have the clear idea about the member function. Well, a member function, that is the simply a member function, those function who are defining in the class, they known as the normal member function. Well, this is the syntax of the normal member function. While you are while you are working with the class and the function, well, you have two ways. Either you can define a member function within the class, or you can define the member function outside the class also. But while you are defining the member function outside the class, you should give the prototype or declaration of a member function within the class, like a get data, that is the member function which is defining outside the class. So we need to give the declaration of the get data. So declaration or prototyping of the function, the syntax of the prototyping is return type, member function name, argument, and the semicolon. And displays a member function, that is the defining within the class. So while you are defining the member function, the syntax is return type, member function, argument, and the body of the member function. Well, while you are dealing with the member function, so you should have any declare at least you should have any at least idea, that is the member function has the return type, member function cannot be called automatically. So we will see the how the constructors are different from this the member function. Well, while you are defining a member function, you cannot write a member function name as a class name, while in the case of constructor, a constructor has the same name as a class name. In the case of member function, it will not possible. Well, as you observe in the last slide, that is the constructor member function has the return type. It can be possible void, it can be possible as a void, integer, float. But in the case of constructor, a constructor doesn't have any return type. A constructor is automatically called while you are creating an object in a program, but in the case of member function, it will not automatically call. A user has to explicitly call the member function. If the programmer will not specify constructor in a program, then C++ compiler generate a default constructor for this particular program. So these are the 4 points that they shows that how constructor are different from the normal member function. Now we'll discuss the special characteristics of constructor, like a member function, that member function you can define within the class and outside the class also. But in the case of the constructor, the constructor always should be declared in the public section. It cannot be declared in the private section. Well, constructor do not have any return type, even void also. Well, while the programmer will write create an object, the constructor will automatically invoke. The constructor cannot be inherit like other member function. Constructor can have a default arguments, while constructor cannot refer the address, and the constructor cannot be virtual. So these are the some special characteristics of constructor. So up to that we have covered what is constructor, how constructor are the different from the normal member functions, and the special characteristics of the constructor. Now we will see the different types of constructor. That is, the first is the default constructor, second is parameterized, and third one is a copy constructor. In default constructor, as the name suggested, it is default, which doesn't take any argument, or it has no parameter. The syntax of the default constructor is the class name, there's the same as the class name, no parameter or argument, and this is the body of constructor. To understand the default constructor, here as the program is given, so we'll just copy this program and run into the editor. While okay, it has already mentioned, fine. Now while I copy this program into this code block, well, we have declared a class named as cube, side as a data member. This is the constructor. So how you are going to define this as a constructor or member function? While constructor as defined as the same name as a class name, constructor doesn't have any parameter or argument, and constructor as the body. So this is the default constructor. So while the program execution will start from the main, we are creating object named as C. So while we are creating object, the default constructor will call. So it will print it will print answer as 10. Alright. Now the variation is in the program. Here we have called the default, here we have defined the default constructor, but if you are not defined any default constructor, then what is the scenario, what is the different possibility? See, these are the different position, like a cube is a class. In the class I have declared here as a side as a data member, and I'm creating an object. So here we are not creating declaring any constructor. In that case, like, to understand this situation, we'll paste this program into code block and we'll see. So this output will be the program execution start will with the main object is creating. Now as per our previous discussion, while we are creating object in C++ program, it will automatically call the default constructor, but here we are not defining any default constructor, so it will generate 0, or it may be generate any random value. As you have seen here, it will generate the random value, that is a 4309678. So here we have learned that is the default constructor. A default constructor cannot be we can, if we are not defining the default constructor within the program, so while we are creating the object, a compiler will automatically call the default constructor. And while we are not defining any values to the default constructor, it can be print 0 or it can be print any random integer value. Now to understand this, the default constructor, we will see some different examples. This is the example shows the uh, illustrations of the default constructor. All right, just pasted here. Okay. All right, here I declared the rectangle class. In rectangle class, I have defined these two data member, that is the length and breadth. In public section, I have defined the default constructor, which doesn't have any return type, which doesn't have any argument, and the constructor same as a class name. So this is the body of constructor. This is the normal member function named as area, which will return the length and breadth. So while I will start the execution of program with the main. So while I'm creating the rect, so as per our previous discussion, it will call this the rectangle, and then it will print, that is the area, which is the member function I have already defined. It will call here, so it will return the length into breadth. Now we'll see another example of parameterized constructor. Well, parameterized constructor, this constructor with the parameter, using this constructor you can provide the different values to the different data member of the object by passing the appropriate value as an argument. See, this is the example of the parameterized constructor. In a last example, as we have seen, in the argument we doesn't have pass anything, so it is known as the default constructor. Here we are passing the argument, so it is known as the parameterized constructor. In this example, we have created class named as cube. We have declared the data member as a public. In this we have defined the parameterized constructor with the same as a class name parameter, and x is allotted to the side. Now I'm creating another object, that is c1, c2, c3. So while I'm creating the object c1, it will automatically call this the parameterized constructor, allotted value to 10, 20 and 30. After that I'm going to just print 10, 20 and 30. See, as they're the same thing that we can see here in the program. I'll run this program, it will print 10, 20 and 30. Now it is another example of the parameterized constructor. In this example, we have declared the class name as point. We declare this the two variable as a private. In public section, we have declared the constructor, that is the parameterized constructor, and this getX and getY, these are the two member function. So while I'm creating object name as p1, and it will define as a 10 and 15 with the passing a parameter, so it will automatically assign this the 10 and 15 to the x1 and y1 as the local variable. We cannot directly deal with the x1 and y1, so we are going to allocate the value of x1 to the x and y1 to the y. So after that we are calling this function with the help of object, that is p1. So I'm just calling the p1 dot getx and p1 dot getY, so it will give the value as a 10 and 50. Now we will going to see this the copy constructor. In copy constructor, this is the another variation of the constructor, that is the copy. Well, a copy constructor, the process of initializing through a copy constructor is called the copy initialization also. These are the example, that is the class name, object 2, object 1, object 2 is equal to object 1. So these are the two different way you can use this the copy constructor. While you are dealing with the copy constructor, you need to have you need to remember the syntax, that is the class name